On this episode of the Ducks Unlimited podcast, I have Marty Hanson, Master Decoy Carver, and Jody Marler of Fishcamp Creative. And we talk about decoy carving and the documentary, The Craft, that they did together. Stick around.
Can we do a mic check, please?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
I'm your host, Katie Burke.
I'm your host, Dr. Jared Henson. And I'm your host, Matt Harrison.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. The DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Katie Burke. And today on the show, I have Marty Hanson, Decoy Carver. Welcome to the show, Marty.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, this is your second time on the podcast. You're
Right.
actually my first interview.
Yeah.
So people do go back and listen to that one because we'll kind of skip over some of your stuff today. So make sure you go back and listen to that one. And then also I have Jody Marler here from Fishcamp Creative. Welcome.
Thank you, Katie. Great to be here.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible, you opening up your place to us.
And your
the last
family,
couple days.
it was fun. It was-
Yeah.
it was
We've been
really
hunting for the last 3 days.
Yep.
And now we're here in Memphis. So we'll do this and then we'll go to the museum and
Yeah.
it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's cool. My
Yeah.
first
Good
time
eventful
being
week.
here.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
really good.
This is your first time here too,
Ever.
right?
Yeah.
And you've worked with DU for
Since the early 80s.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah,
you know,
were
the local chapters and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was talking to my boss Doug Barnes about your the magazine cover,
Mm-hmm.
and he thinks you might be the only decoy. It's one of few.
Well, there was two that were made. One of them
Okay.
had mallards on it. One had a pair of pintails. And Lee Jost did
Yeah.
both of those
But
photographs.
he thinks you might be the only
might be the
cover
only,
that
yeah.
has a decoy for DU magazine.
Yeah, I know they had some type of criteria for those covers, and Lee somehow got
He got around.
it in there.
Well, he knows
so-
a guy.
Yeah, he knows somebody. Lee knows lots of people.
But yeah, because the only other thing Doug could think of was they did an article on Masons, but that didn't make the cover.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think you might be the only
Pretty special.
Yeah,
and
it's-
carved
it's
decoy on the
great,
cover. Yeah.
If I was
that's-
thinking, I have those two covers.
Oh,
I
really?
should have brought them, but just
Yeah.
completely forgot.
Oh, that's cool.
Lot
What year
going
was
on.
that?
Oh.
That was in the 90s, or no, 2000, early 2000s.
Early 2000s,
Yep.
from what I recall. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool cover. I actually pulled it up. I'll have to pull it up for like Instagram for this.
Yeah, there's one with there's a rig of mallards that we hunted over this week.
Okay.
That's in there, and Lee's got a boat motor and other things in
Okay,
there.
that's the one I'm forgetting. And then the other one's the
Two
pintails in the
pintails
shop.
with they're next to a gunpowder barrel and a couple
Yeah.
duck calls and a shotgun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one I'm thinking of. That's a really cool cover.
Yeah, I should have brought those birds.
It's a really
Should've brought it.
unique Ducks Unlimited cover. We
Well,
don't do many like that.
That's Lee. you
Yeah.
know. I mean, he's just real good at stretching the boundaries
Yeah.
and doing what he can. He's good.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't have many covers like that. Most of them are, outside habitat.
Dogs.
Dogs, yeah.
Right.
Nothing really in a shop or anything.
Yeah.
All right. So in our first interview, we talk about, let's say, like go back, because we kind of talk about how you get into carving and that whole starting, evolution of becoming a carver and
Mhm.
everything. But one of the things when I listened back to it today, and the kind of thing I really wanted to talk to you about was, which we have decoys right here. Especially for contemporary carvers, we talk a little bit about how you have a unique style, but I kind of want to hear more about I know you kind of developed your own style on your own, kind of try to make sure you had a unique style, but I know you were inspired by old carvers and old decoys.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I'd like to hear a little more about that part of your evolution a little bit more.
Yeah, a lot of influences, but I think my earliest influences were contemporary carvers. There was a guy that lived in our state named Richard Scheibel, and I was young and I didn't have a driver's license and stuff, and I was able to go to his shop and use his bandsaw and stuff. And he was building a large rig for a guy by the name of Bob Lindstrom at the time, and Dick would have his carvings there, and he'd have some old Ben Schmidt decoys there in his shop, and I always took an admiration of those, while visiting him. Dick was working for Bob, making these large gunning rigs, diver rigs, but he kind of slowed down and kind of went the wayside, so I kind of took over Dick's situation with Bob. But that, in 1979, 80, roughly, you were like in a vacuum. There was no social media. There was Bruce Burke had the carving book. I think it was printed in 1976. So, that's only 3 years into when I was starting, and that was the book, Bruce Burke's book. And it was about decorative carving. It wasn't about hunting decoys. So, I was fortunate, I think, to not have a lot of exposure to the outside because I didn't collect then. I didn't know anything at that time. I was a teenager, and it was a job. The influence factor of it. Bob Lindstrom might have been more the owner of these decoys, more of an influence than anything because he wanted things built a certain way.
Okay.
And that was the function that he wanted.
Right.
And if I didn't do that, he didn't like it, and he didn't want them. So I think that influenced a lot of how these turned out versus other carvers. Now, modern day today, there's all kinds of carvers that influence. All carvers are influenced you're influenced by what you see.
Well, yeah.
What you see in your experiences.
I guess my question with that is like, how much do you think the region kind of fed into your...
Oh, the region is huge.
Yeah.
The Minnesota-style decoy is a flat-bottom bird. It's very similar to a Michigan bird. And this is post-1950. Right. 1940, 50. Herders was in Minnesota at the time, and old carvers like Marv Burnett, they made a very similar decoy. Flat bottom, nice and wide, rolled the water good. They liked keels on everything, and that's a taste. If you like that, that's great. I made this group of birds for Jody, and we didn't put keels on them because they move a little bit better in the wind and in the river, if they're in a river. But the region is my carvings are definitely a Midwestern style carving.
Yeah.
Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Right. Yeah, and there are contemporary carvers in that area, but it's definitely fewer than
there
it is
fewer
because the East Coast is where the most.
That's where they all are. Yep.
Yeah, right. So you're kind of off on your own a little bit. Too.
Yeah, there's not a lot in the Midwest. There's a few guys.
Yeah,
there's a few guys.
Do you find though? This is kind of a funny question, but because they are such Midwest decoys, but because you've got this notoriety as one of the better contemporary carvers out there now, that people, even though everyone's on the East Coast and they're mainly doing like East Coast style, do you find that you see people that may not be in your region starting to pick up on your style that you're like,
I think sometimes
that's not where you hunt those?
I think what happens is they use little bits, and you can see little influences in it, and if it's something that they really like, they'll stick with it. Those influences seem to come in one and two birds that they'll make, and then it'll disappear because your style is your style.
Yeah.
When you're copying something else, that's not you.
Yeah.
And that was my whole thing.
Right.
And I was, like I said, I was fortunate. I kind of lived in a vacuum. I had no access to any of this stuff. So you had to kind of create what you had to make.
And function's a big part of that.
Function was the main thing when I started, was function. Because, I made 700-800 birds a year for this guy. For 10 years, a long time.
I got to ask, were they hollow?
No, none of them were. They were just heavy clunks.
Yeah.
So when did you start?
All diving ducks. The guys had 20-foot boats, and they left the decoys in the boats. They never took them out.
Right.
Huh.
So, and they wanted wood, and they shot into it. They wanted stuff that would last, and they wanted wood. They'd set 600 to 700 birds out at a time.
Yeah.
Western Minnesota. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was like, he ran that. Bob ran that boat like a military operation. When you were in there, you had to drop at the right time. Everything had to be perfect.
Right.
Otherwise,
to get that line
he went
right.
crazy. Yeah. He'd just go nuts. Yeah. He was a piece of work.
So with that, because you're doing I have two questions. So, and it may be one or the other. But, okay, so you're making that many decoys, right? They're not hollow. They're solid. Are you, I'm guessing at that time, seeing what is sturdy at that? Like, okay, this stays. This I don't have to fix it. This I have to fix.
Oh, I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, and not, you know, I always used wooden decoys with my father and stuff, but that was old junk. You know, it was, nobody cared about it, old worn out masons and whatnot. But you definitely have to, I just lost my thought train there.
Adapt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like if you're doing that many and you're like, oh, I don't want to build a whole another one. How do I make this thing last longer, right?
You must remember, too, I was probably 13, 14
Yeah,
years
that's
old,
right.
and you got a 40-year-old guy telling you what to do. You just do it.
You just
know,
do it.
Whether you want to or not, you just do it.
Okay, so when did you start to hollow out birds?
Probably in the 90s, when the shows became prevalent. See, I didn't really do shows until 1981 or 2.
Okay.
There was no shows that I knew of. There was shows, obviously, but I didn't know about them. And I started doing shows when the value, intrinsic value, was more to the person buying the decoy than the decoy.
Right.
They wanted something that was light when they got it, or nicely painted, which the ducks could care less about.
Yeah.
The hollowing is a time consuming aspect of it, but like these birds, when they're hollow, they'll never crack.
Yeah.
A solid bird, you know, you see the great old Joe Lincolns and stuff, they'll always have a crack down the back, you know, or the Elmer Crolls, big-bodied Elmer Crolls, always got a big crack.
Masons
that were solid, you know, they
Why
always got a
is
crack. Well, that wood, you know, if you have a center core of the heart of the wood, as that wood contracts, it's got to go somewhere.
Okay.
So that crack is going to develop somewhere. What I do to circumvent a lot of that, if I do need to make a solid bird, is that when I put my wood up, I let it crack wherever it's going to crack, and then I know. So when I make that bandsaw cut, you know, the log would crack in half in a spot, but I know where it was. So when I make that bandsaw cut, I cut that crack out.
Yeah.
So that's never going to happen.
I never thought about. I just thought you hollowed them to make them lighter.
That's one of the things too.
Yeah.
To
But
be honest
there was
with
actually a structural reason.
it's to stop from splitting ever. You know, and it keeps the wood stable. But there's a definite aspect of solid birds that they ride better. They do look better on the water. They're harder to deal with unless you have a big boat. Then it doesn't matter what you got. But for like the type of hunting that we did this week, you wouldn't know unless you left them out there.
Right.
And that's what they did. He did that a lot.
Oh,
You know, he'd have a stash out by the lake there.
Yeah. No, we did that when I was a kid.
Oh, sure.
I have to ride the boat around in the year and pick them all up.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that makes sense. Like if you're on the Chesapeake Bay, obviously they're all like solid body birds. There's waves,
and they're not carrying that stuff.
No,
they've got a big, nice boat, and they bring them in the boat. They leave them at the dock there,
Yeah.
and then
on a string.
and then they go out.
Yeah. But these are, you know, puddle ducks along the Mississippi River. Yeah, you're gonna get a little different situation.
Yeah, the hollowing is an important thing, and it's time consuming. But people nowadays, if they're going to spend this kind of money, they want it hollow.
Okay.
You know?
So I want to ask, like, at what point when you were younger did you like start feeling like your style? When did you first come up with that?
It's a hard question to ask because I don't really, you know, you think you were just doing what you were doing, but I could start seeing it after 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Probably 79, 80.
Okay.
You know,
Because when you were first doing it, it's a job. You just want to make these
I was
things and please
making
them.
making 30 birds a week, you know,
Right.
which was a lot.
Yeah.
You know, back then I got $30 a piece for them. You know, $30 a piece, 30 a week, and you just kept doing it. You know, it beats working, that's for sure. You know.
All right. So I think of that. When did this head style right here? Like, do you know when that started happening?
That
Because it's very Marty.
probably in the last 15 years.
Okay.
You know, that's an evolution of many, you know, hundreds of birds between now. But it's where I'm comfortable now, and when I make something, that's kind of what I do. Yeah. Unless somebody wants something else. But for the most part, this is what the people are looking for. If they're going to use them, they want what is the carver's idea.
Yeah.
They don't want something that's copied after something else.
Right.
I mean, they can, but they want what the carver is. Mm-hmm. And when I collect even contemporary stuff, I want that carver.
Yeah.
I don't want a remake of something else by that carver. I want his work.
Their style.
Yeah, their style. Because it means more to me, you know.
Yeah.
It's more personal to me, I guess.
No, I wanted that because that's such like, you see that and I'm like, oh, that's Marty.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and that's the best compliment I can have for the simple fact that the style's recognizable, you know, and that helps. That helps a lot.
So, to kind of go back to like, when did your paint? So I'm assuming those early birds, you were putting fairly minimal paint on there. They're diving birds too, so there's that. Minimal. Yeah, they're minimal. So when did you kind of start exploring doing this more detailed paint work?
Probably 83, 84. I graduated in 1983, so right around 18, 19 years old.
You had a little more time.
And I kind of was looking for work, and we were doing some carpentry and this and that, and I was still building these birds, and I just found out that I needed to supplement my income a little bit, so I'd make a couple fancy birds, and there was a company called Wild Wings, which I'm sure you guys were familiar with. I did a lot of stuff with that gallery with Jerry Epple. I'd go in and he'd give me $100 for the bird, and he'd sell it for $300 or whatever they did. But he was a money source for me at that time because going full time on a carving endeavor like this, and this is what you're going to do. It's the only reason I could do it is because I was young.
Yeah.
I mean, to start it at 25 or 30, I don't know how you can do it. You know, it's tough.
I could see that.
Yeah. So I don't know. But so, okay, of course, all these early, you're trying to make money off these things. And then, of course, that influences what you do because you need to make a living off of it.
Right.
How much now, like, or kind of in those middle years, were you fighting, like, your style versus, like, selling decoys, like, and having to fight that?
It's still kind of ongoing.
Yeah.
Finding that level that's good and what keeps you busy, and you're doing work for people you want to do work for, and you're doing the things you want to make.
Right.
That's happened in the last 10 or 15 years. In the early 2000s, 2005-ish, I did all the masters for Final Approach when they first started. Our company bought from, I think it was Ron Latshaw. I think that's who started it. When I was working for them, then that was a different thing. Then it became a job. Because you have to get this done in this timeline, you know.
Yeah.
But all those things are an evolution, and you learn from those things. You know?
Right. So I was talking to, which we talked about Jet Brunet this past weekend, and I interviewed him, and you know, his goal, his dad won 5 world championships, right? So his goal was to get those 5 worlds, and I asked him, which I was surprised he was honest about, but I was like, at what point did it become a chore to have to do those super realistic birds? Like, you weren't into it anymore and you're just doing them win. And he was like, oh, 100% it was a chore. I didn't want to do them anymore at all.
Oh, yeah.
And now that you see his stuff, he doesn't do any of it.
No, and I think
he does, I think, maybe one a year.
I mean, he's saving himself from burnout. You know, I've talked to him about that. We both had the same outlook on it. It's like the decorative stuff is beautiful, but Jesus, just takes so much out of you.
Yeah.
And he was having fun just doing smooth stuff and, you know, maybe not so involved, and he was having fun with that. I know he does a lot of stuff with you guys at one point.
He still does his, he does a decoy a year for us. Yeah.
He's enjoying that, and, you know, I mean, that's what it's about. If you're going to do this for a living, you got to make sure you don't get tired of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people carve, and they're carving one year, and then you don't see them again.
So how do you combat that?
I combat that by I end up working for people I want to work for.
Okay.
I end up making what I want to make. You know, it's hard to say no to anybody because you always want to try to help them out and please them, but some people you just can't.
Yeah.
You know, so you just try to pick your customers and do the best you can and try to learn something every time. I'm still at this point. You know, when I did these for Jody, the next 6 will be different. I'll be trying to change something else.
Okay.
You know, nothing is ever the same. And I think keeping your mind in that thing is always trying to improve will stop the burnout.
Yeah.
You know, Jody would probably be able to comment on something like that with his building of homes. You know,
for sure.
He's picked his clientele,
right?
You know, and you learn what you can do and what you're.
Yeah.
Well, you learn who you want to work with and
that's
don't
it.
want to work with
Because it's a process.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I do that too.
Oh, absolutely.
You see it, like, I get it. Yeah.
Everybody does. You know, whatever it is, it's got to be sane for the person.
Right.
You know, so.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. So I know you're still doing some decorative stuff. Doing. So how much, like, percentage-wise, are you doing, like, something decorative, which takes up a lot more time versus doing some working birds?
And how many flamingos?
I didn't think we were going to talk about that.
He didn't want to talk about the flamingo.
That was a close friend. That was a stretch to be able to do that. Yeah, it was a real good friend.
got
One and
done. Yeah, one and done.
You got to use all the colors,
colors we
that
don't
you've
use.
never gotten to use before.
Nothing
Now
is
they're all
pink.
gone.
Nothing is pink. I forgot the question.
Yeah. So the decorative stuff like the flamingo versus how much of that takes up your working time versus like working.
I use that, and it kind of answers your question too about burnout. I use those things for burnout when I'm doing this. And okay, I got to go farther than this. I will create something, and what I'll do is I'll work on that while I'm doing other things. But when I need this time, I go and work on that better piece because that's what my mind's set on.
Yeah.
You lay in bed thinking about it at night, and it's like you got to apply that the next day.
Yeah.
And that keeps me from burnout also. You know, the duck calls were another thing that kept me interested in progressing forward because we got tired of building ducks. Build duck calls, that's a completely different part of your brain. I mean, that's a machinist part of the brain, and that's not me.
And they have to sound good.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
Not only do they have to be pretty.
Yeah, and you know, when I started making them, you know, Howard Harlan's book or those books weren't even out, so you just had to find
Wing
one
it.
and kind of copy it and figure out what worked
And I've
what
heard
didn't.
they can be like worse than decoy carvers sometimes with helping people in certain areas.
Once they get a tone and they've got a method, that's a trade secret. You know, I don't blame them because, you know, the carvers, the duck calls today are just unbelievable. The stuff that they create is incredible.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy.
You know, a lot of them have a machinist background, you know, very, very detailed and, you know.
And we talked about Brian Byers, who's been on the podcast.
Yeah,
He's like an engineer.
Yeah.
You can tell he's an engineer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, okay. And I'm guessing, like, too, when you're doing those decoratives, like, you can almost, like, pick a new problem to try to figure out every time you're
That's a great
thinking
question.
of a form.
I did that goose that is in the documentary for Ken Cole. We put his hunting dog's ashes in it, his name was Goose also. But we did a full-size piece, standing goose, that it took, you know, it was 2 years project. But I always had problems with feet on my standing birds. And I said, you know, I'm going to take this time to fix this foot problem I've got that I got to start paying attention to the feet because it's the first thing somebody looks at.
Yeah. Really?
And that goose was that time. So I mean, that's a great question. It was like, okay, I improved on the feet. That's what I got out of that whole goose. Is the feet are the way I want them. Now I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And not only that, you had the footsteps.
The footsteps, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
That
walking goose. It's not a
walking,
standing goose. It's a walking
we put the
goose.
little foot imprints in the base.
Yeah,
you know, like it
it's
was
incredible.
trail. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And that was a fun project, and I'm about ready to do something again like that, whether it's a dead hang project or a big piece. You know,
I don't know if I've seen
That
a
would be
dead hang
nice.
of yours.
I've done about a half a dozen of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love a dead hang.
Oh.
But I mean, and I'm guessing even that, you know, don't want to talk about the flamingo, but that thing has
It was
crazy
fun.
neck on it.
It was fun, yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun,
So
you
I'm
know.
sure that's
it was fun.
Too.
Yeah, it was totally out of my wheelhouse, you know. But sometimes you need to do that too, you know.
Yeah.
Opens your mind up
Keep
a little
it
bit.
fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm guessing too when you do that and you like kind of open your mind up, that it kind of then leads to another, like
Sure.
kind of starting to another.
Absolutely,
thing.
you know. Yeah, I think one thing feeds on the other.
Right.
You know, if I'm out of the shop for a week, it takes me about 2 days to get my mind back in that role of what the deal is.
Right.
You know, just
Makes sense.
Sometimes it happens immediately, but there's times where it's a couple days. And it's like, gotta get the fog
gotta
out.
just do it.
Yeah.
Do you just do like little things until you get there? Like,
Sometimes I
that's
will.
what I would
Put around.
Yeah, put around. Yeah, basically.
Whittle, you know. I do miniatures. I'll do a lot of miniatures to clear my head with stuff because it's scrap wood and something simple and it's not physical. Making these decoys, it's surprisingly physical. You're working a draw knife. Everything I do is by hand. You're working a draw knife and spoke shave all day long, and it's upper body. And one time when I wore a Fitbit, I haven't worn them in years, but you know, I'd go out walking and the Fitbit would say, you know, 120 beats a minute or whatever. So I put it on while I was carving, and it was getting to like 150, 160, just standing there.
Yeah.
You know, so it is somewhat.
And you don't sit down really.
I don't
ever.
sit. No,
Yeah.
I stand pretty much.
Paint when you
50-50. I have a higher, you know, bar stool type chair that I do sit when I'm, you know, really getting into something. When you paint something, you got to have it, you know, attached to your body in several points so it doesn't move. You know what I mean? So I will sit during some of that, but I'm pretty much on my feet all day.
How would you paint those standing things like that big goose? Like,
Yeah,
That's not. I mean, this obviously you can put it in your lap, and you're like, yeah, you can wedge it down.
if it's
but
got a
that's
base, it's kind of good. It's good, but
Okay.
I will put a fixture on the bottom, and I'll put it in a vise, so it's always secure, and I can spin it and move it. The vise has the rotational factor in the front and the back, and I'll do it that way. But I'll make sure that thing is really locked in there so it doesn't fall out. And you walk around it, you paint around it. You're sometimes you rub into it, and you just your sleeve will rub off what you just did.
Now
and
you got pink flamingo on you.
Well, we didn't get any pink on it. We made sure the pink wasn't. It was gone.
Yeah, because I mean, and you're working with such wet and thin paint.
All wet.
You touch it, and
it's all wet. Everything
There
I
you
do is
go.
pretty much wet on wet. So
Yeah.
I mean, when I went over to China to do the masters for Final Approach, they'd laugh at me because all the workers there had black pants, black patent leather shoes, and a perfectly white press shirt. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then I'm in there painting, and I'm wiping brushes on my clothes and my pants, and they're all laughing at me. I mean, there's 40 people staring at it and just laughing. Like, look at that guy. What's he doing? And then when they left that factory at the end of that day, their clothes were as clean as when they came.
Oh, really?
And they painted too.
Yeah.
It was amazing how they could do it.
Yeah.
And not get paint all over. I have paint. I'll have it in my mouth. I'll have paint all over when I'm into it.
Yeah. No, that's how I know about painting.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. But like, where do they put the paint when they wipe? They just have like a little.
Well, they have
Like, I need to know how this
whole
works.
other world.
Yeah, and they're shooting most of it. But there's the ladies.
Yeah.
The ladies will seem to be better at it, but they'll do the detail work with the brushes and stuff, and they have their little tray, and just like we do it. But I mean, they don't drip nothing. Everything's perfect.
When did you do the Final Approach?
2000 to about 2012.
Okay, and they sold it during that time.
I designed that whole the duck line, and then we used that for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years. Then Bushnell bought us, and then I think ATK Federal bought it from Bushnell.
Okay.
So we lost it after a couple years, and that was the intent, to build the line and then move on.
They don't still use yours, do they?
No, the Tom Christie, I think, is a new carver.
Yeah, he's done it before, I think.
Pat
Yeah.
Godden, I think, is another one, and there's a couple more.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's more decorative guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I was talking to them about that too. Like, I was talking to you about this. So, like, it's about Chicago. We're talking about like that inability to like reproduce stuff like this. Like, it kind of goes against.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's hard to like tell people who aren't into this, like, you have to buy you're not going to get a reproduction of something like this. You can't buy a cheaper version of something like this because that goes against the art of what this is.
Right.
And can you I guess if you can like speak on that for just a second, just to kind of in your words explain why that is, so that people who don't understand why you can't, like, why it has to be done, why it needs to be done this way versus like a cheaper method to make it more mass produced.
Well, my main intention is to keep the tradition in making the decoys. I come from the collector side. That's where I met Jody many years ago. And collectors have a different brain. I know a lot of people duck hunt, and a lot of people don't collect.
Yeah.
Duck hunt, and they wouldn't even think of it.
Right.
But the collector's a different deal. And the main thing with me was doing everything handmade, no power tools. I use a bandsaw and a drill, but I mean everything else is done the old world way.
And for these, this is hunting season all year long.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
artwork in your home.
Yeah,
I'm definitely using these. Obviously, we use them the last 3 days.
Yeah.
But end of the season,
They're on the
artwork.
shelf.
Yeah, a good friend of mine,
Absolutely.
Ken Cole, has probably the most of mine. And what he does, he gets them at the end of the season. He'll clean them all up, take the weights off, and snap the weights off. And he has his house displayed with them, and it looks great.
Yeah.
I mean,
What's he doing? The hunting season is just empty.
Yeah, he pulls them off, and
Yeah.
what he's going to use, and the shelves will sit there with nothing. So, yeah.
Puts Christmas decorations
Yeah,
in.
yeah. Well, and even to stray from your question a little bit, sitting out and just watching the decoys is maybe you realize, I don't know if you've hunted over what I think you did with
I have,
John and those guys that time,
Yeah.
but it gives you something else to do while you're out there when it's slow, to see, okay, I changed this, I don't like that, I like that,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
It's interesting. Yeah, you get to see them. Like we hunted different holes and stuff, so you get to see what they're doing in different.
Yeah, and they acted different every.
Yeah.
That last place we shot. What was that last night? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
where they were
nice in the
They were
swimming back and
moving.
forth.
That was cool. Yeah, that's also like something I noticed, like with hunting over the ones we hunted with John and them, and they have like such a specific style of decoy too, like that New Jersey style. It's a pretty. Yep. It's either a feeder or just a straight ahead. Like it's not really. Your decoys have so much motion in them.
Yeah,
like they definitely look like they're doing.
And attitude, and
and like I said before about some people like keels, some people don't. The keels will stop a lot of that motion. So the Midwestern thing is to have a keel and make it stable. You're usually hunting in 1.5-foot waters that are white capping. So that's not a big deal. Now what we did the other day, you need the motion.
Yeah.
So there's keels versus non-keels. So that's also a Midwest thing, is the keel aspect of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
And a regional style. I mean, I'm trying to think just offhand. I'm sure there's some California birds or something that got keels, but you look at Masons, they didn't have keels.
Any of the
I
wells.
know Joel Lincoln didn't have
St. Clair flats.
None of the flats guys had keels. So they few of them did, but yeah. So it's definitely a Midwestern thing. It's definitely Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan.
Illinois birds don't have keels really either.
No, Michigan was probably
kind of built into.
They do have the little rounded bottom, but they aren't as rounded as like a Holly or something on the East Coast. They're a little bit.
Yeah, right.
They just kind of rock.
And that was river. That was the river. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I kind of did want to talk about it because you are kind of unique in that you are doing the very Midwest versus because there's just not as many carvers around your area anymore.
There isn't. There's a few guys.
There's a few guys.
But full-time guys, there's not a lot. There's a couple. And in the United States, I don't think there's that many. I'd probably count them on 2 hands.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For the most part, I think. I mean, I could be mistaken, but
there's probably that do the whole.
There might
thing.
be a dozen or something.
That do the 10. Whole thing from by hand.
Mm-hmm.
There's not that many. All right. Well, let's go to break, and we'll come right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Again, I have Marty Hanson and Jody Marler here. And I forgot to introduce our little puppy friends. This is Cedar and Cracker down here below us. These are Marty's labs, and they're just chilling out because they've hunted with us for the last 3 days. They've worked hard.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to pick up a couple ducks.
Yep.
And swim a lot and run around a lot. They didn't get to hunt that much this year, did they?
No.
Yeah.
I think this is first. A few pheasant trips. But
first time in cold water.
This year.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they've been good.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't get up when I just
They lived through it.
All right.
They're not going to freeze in Mississippi. But
no, they will not. All right. So I kind of want to go back now that why Jody's here because he came on the trip and everything as well. But the one thing I want to talk about for the second half is the doc you guys did together. But before we get into that, let's kind of talk about how you know each other and how you met and how that whole relationship started.
Jody can take that.
So I I'm originally from Chicago and went to my first decoy show, Midwest Decoy Collectors Show in early 90s. And I saw Marty there, but I never talked to him, kind of walked by, see what he's got. And I was up in the Milwaukee show. My wife and I were up there, and him and his buddy Mike Valley were having a good old time. A Marty party.
Yeah.
So
you were in the hotel room Marty party?
Yeah. And it was late night. It was the only room open, and we've been friends ever since. Yep. And, we've been to the auction several times and have bid against each other on a couple.
You bid against me.
And I saw you back there. I turn around and there's Marty.
There's no friends at an auction, is there?
So,
we have similar interests too. The lacrosse fish is a big thing. Yeah, so, Jody fishes a lot. So, I mean, he's into the fish decoys and the decoys too. But.
So did you start off with fish decoys?
No.
As a collector? No.
Well, how I got into collecting is a neighbor of mine, older woman. They were having a garage sale that weekend. And, weekends here, I'm going out fishing or hunting, whatever. Come back on Sunday and there's a Mason in my door. Bluebill. I'm like, where the heck did this come from? and I was young at the time. So her son came over and said, "Oh, we had a bunch of decoys that we sold in the auction or in the garage sale, and then we just found this one." I'm like, "Oh my God, I should have stayed home that weekend."
Oh, really?
You know, I mean, my immediate neighbor.
You had an interest in it then?
I knew about them because another good friend of mine from the town I grew up in, his mom was a carver, and then that Rosen.
Yeah, Rosen. Yeah, I remember her.
Yeah. So, and Hank had a bunch of Purdue's and a lot of calls.
Yeah.
So I definitely learned from him, and getting that first Mason just kind of pushed me into it. And I'm a home builder, cabinet maker. I mean, I appreciate things that are made by hand.
Right.
So,
right.
So it's kind of a full circle. I mean,
it's amazing what starts a person, you know, something like that.
Exactly.
Did you keep it?
I still have it.
You still have it?
Yeah.
I like it when people
That's
keep
cool.
their first one.
I haven't, you know, we go to all these auctions and shows, and people are like, you know, that one comes up for auction. God, I own that. And I sold it for $3,000. It just sold for 40 grand, something like that. I haven't sold a thing.
Really?
Yeah, but I collect, my wife and I, she loves shorebirds, you know, but it's not like, oh, New Jersey, it's nothing. We like what we like.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, sporting art. I love old advertising, fish decoys. And the thing for me about fish decoys, like, it has to feel good in your hand. It just, there's something about it. But it's also these decoys. You know, I love those St. Clair Flats birds.
Yeah, right.
And I love these. I mean, you can still smell the paint. I mean,
Yeah, that's pretty
seriously.
fun, yeah.
It's about 6 months of that.
Enjoy it while you
It'll
can.
last
Exactly.
It'll last that long. It'll be 6 months.
Well, we're definitely going to put these to work in Montana.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to do the doc? Like what brought upon that whole? Where'd y'all get to that point?
Well, so it's knowing Marty and, you know, Marty and Barb and, you know, and then Marty's world. So, you know, I would see him at the shows, and for years he would say, stop by, because I live in Montana now, and I've got a camp in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And, you know, being in Chicago, you grow up going to Wisconsin, of course, but I've never been to Hayward. And Marty's like, hey, you're coming through. Why don't you stop by? And I was up ice fishing with a buddy, and I'm driving back to Montana, and it was like minus 20 or something. So I stopped by Marty's, and I was blown away. I mean, I know his carvings, but then to go in his shop.
Yeah.
And their house. And I mean, what you guys have done there. So for me, as a creative person, for me, it was, this is a whole package. And after that trip, I was like, I want to capture this. I want to capture it personally, but this is bigger. And if any of you know Marty Hanson, Marty and Barb, they are the most gracious people, super sincere. So it was very easy to do this. I remember rolling in that January when we started filming. You were a little uptight, you know, because we come in, cameras, the whole deal, want to set up, and you were totally on board with it. So it was super fun, and Marty and I have talked about it. When it was done, you know, it's kind of sad.
It
After
was
were
like an
shooting,
event that we had,
it was awesome, man. It was just like, you know, I produced this, I paid for all of this,
right.
And I didn't want it to end because for me, when you're telling a story, you know, the person is still alive and that story continues. And now here we are, you know, 1.5, 2 years after shooting.
Still doing it.
And here we are.
It's over. It's over, but we're still doing it.
And I have my first, you know, match
First rig,
set. Yeah. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
And Jody, when we started this, he pitched the idea, and he was doing these documentaries on people that have a craft,
Right.
Whether you're a drift boat builder, would you have a gun engraver?
Yep.
Anybody that did something that's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say not normal, but
It's a
out of
craft.
it's a craft, and there's only one way to do it. You can't mass produce it. You can't do it's what you do every day.
From doing it, as a youngster, basically, and continue. For me, it would be very difficult to do this on somebody who's upper 20s. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like
it's like a seasoned,
this is a lifelong
artist.
craft.
Yeah. They don't want to be called an artist, but like a seasoned artist has been doing this for
exactly
a long time,
right?
And develop their style.
Yep.
So how was that for you? Okay, I know you carvers. Y'all don't like to be called artists. You don't like attention, but you don't really like attention. So how was it when you were told that you had to do a documentary? Like, was your initial thoughts like, I should do it? I don't know if I want to do it.
I wanted to do it.
He's my friend, so maybe I'll do it.
Well, I wanted to do it because I knew who I was doing it with. I
Right.
knew what Jody's intentions were, and I've known him for a long time. And that's would be the biggest factor of doing any of these things.
Yeah.
Is really knowing that. And no, we had a great time. And, it was
And you have to
comfortable.
know the person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to do something on something you don't know about,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the crew maybe didn't hunt or anything. It just didn't. Yeah.
You have to have that connection.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, especially with this doc, because it has a lot of emotion to it.
Yep.
And I would see that would be kind of hard if you didn't connect to the emotion that.
Well, and they created that.
there.
They created that. I mean, I don't think
With the questions and
I don't think you were trying to do a documentary on a how-to video. That's what we didn't want it. And that's what we didn't want it.
Go on YouTube, you can find those.
Yeah.
Find them. Yeah. They're all over the place.
Right.
No, that makes sense. All right. So in that, you have you did the Brandt decoys for that.
Yes.
Can you speak on why did you do the Brandts for that doc, and what is the role with that part?
One of the main things is we have a trip to Washington every year, and sometimes it's Eastern Washington, sometimes it's West, and the Brandt thing I had a lot of interest in. I'd shot a few Brandt on the East Coast, but not on the West Coast, which is a different species of Brandt. And whenever we were there, the timing wasn't the best, and the season wasn't. Sometimes it was completely closed. So I kind of went in there with the Brandt. It'd be nice to have a rig of Brandt, put them out there in the bay there, and with our friends Gary and John and whatnot, and we used them a couple days. We had rigs come into them. We didn't shoot any Brandt because it was out of season that time. But I mean, it was part of the process.
And there were a couple of Brandt out there that came into them, which was super cool.
Yeah, and I was going to Mexico with Ken that January after that. So I took some of those to Mexico, and we floated them and shot a lot of Brandt over them. It was fun, So that it was a dual fold purpose, I guess.
Yeah, and then those you sold them right for.
I kept 3, and I sold the rest of them. Yeah.
Okay.
So I know a lot of people were interested in it. So I said, well, I'm going to put them up for sale now. Here's what I have. And
so did that part of that go to what is the Brandt Foundation, or what is it called?
The one we did, yes, the one that John Dieter sold for us. The Brandt Foundation got some money off of that.
Brandt,
Washington Brandt Foundation, Maynard and Kurt and those guys. I try to go out there every year and do stuff with them. They raise money for student programs.
Okay.
For biologists, for kids.
Yeah,
I mean, the one, if I can get this right, last year, I think it was, they had one person became the dean of some, you saw them when they were 18, 19, they got the scholarship, and now they're through graduate school and done, and they're big shots now, and it's really cool. And they're young, 20, 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
So they really do a good program. And Maynard has an aviary there. I don't know if that's I can't remember if we have a little
there's
blurb
a shot
in there.
of Maynard.
But he goes to schools and teaches kids about Brandt and ducks, and it's really, really great program with great guys out there. And it's just become, Jody was just out there a week or two ago, and it's just become a great thing knowing those people.
Oh.
What area is that in Washington they do that?
Well, it's Skagit Valley.
Okay.
Skagit Valley. And like Cindy, who's in the documentary, that's her house. Jay, her husband, was a noted serious decoy collector.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about
Beautiful.
putting the coochies in there and what that was like for you to kinda
It was
get to have
important.
them there.
That was the other factor of going to Washington, because Jay had passed and we had hunted out there a lot, and it was just kind of, I wish we could get a little piece of that that's going to be around forever, so people know
Yep.
about it. Because not everybody was fortunate enough to go there.
Yeah.
Jay had his group of people that went, and you're lucky enough, like I was, you went.
So I know that she has his collection there. Because is it open to people?
No,
How does that work?
it's not
Yeah.
open. If
Right.
it's
Yeah, I
it's
didn't
more of
think
a
so.
private.
It's like
and
a
if,
private.
If you make a phone, if you called her, I'm sure she'd be more than happy.
Yeah.
It's something to see. I mean,
Howard Harlan's original duck call collection.
he was
Right.
there every day.
Yeah.
I was there in the early days.
Yeah.
Every days I'd go there. Howard would be sitting there.
He
And
enjoyed his
they
collection
had to
from there
come a long
and there.
ways. I mean, that's a long ways from here to there.
Yeah.
That was incredible. I mean, for us, Marty, of course, told us about it, and we met Dieter there, John Dieter, and to walk into that space and see all of
It's overwhelming.
the Mason wood ducks
Incredible.
alone.
Yeah.
I mean, just incredible.
And Cindy, Jay's wife, has also been really a big part of keeping this brand. She holds a little event there, and she's supporting it. And I mean, she's keeping this going for Jay and her.
Yeah.
Not just for Jay, it's for her too. And they're so grateful to her that
Yeah, I
she's
bet,
still
I'm
doing
sure.
this, you
Yeah.
know. And we hold the event there, a little social event, and then part of the interview in the doc where Cindy's in it, that's her
The background.
living room, I
Background,
guess.
yeah.
Barb as well.
And
The
Barb
museum.
as well.
Yeah.
In quotes.
We had to blur out all the decoys, so we
Yeah.
nobody could.
Made for a great backdrop.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
backdrop.
Oh, you had to blur out the decoys so people couldn't
No,
tell which ones.
It was the lens that did
we
that.
don't need to know which ones
Yeah.
exactly are here.
Exactly. Yeah, it was incredible. But when we were filming, Marty was working on that Ken Cole's goose, that Canada goose. And I mean, it was on the bench and, kind of got a couple of shots of it. But after we got back and we're in post, I'm looking like, why aren't we focused on this incredible goose,
Yeah.
And then to see how it developed, and we have shots of it in the film.
Yeah.
But that goose is incredible.
Yeah,
like,
it
why
was a
wouldn't we
good
just make a
project. Yeah,
bunch
it
of
was
those geese? And
So I'm guessing, you chose because you were going to go out to Washington. You knew you were going to go out to Washington and that.
Yeah, and the brand thing, I was wondering about the time the stock was going to take. So, I mean, to paint a mallard or something, you're way more involved. And I didn't know we were going to work a year and a half, 2 years into it. I thought something was going to have to be quick. So I wanted to show them the process of making a rig was my thing.
Yeah.
And Brandt are pretty easy to paint. They're black and white and gray.
right, and we came out. I think we shot 2 days in January,
Yep.
and we came back in May
Yep.
for a couple days, and then we went to Washington.
Then we went, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah.
Yeah, the Brandt was just an easy project to show the production of 12 things.
Yeah.
In various forms, some of them had the spline bills, some of them had root heads, just to
Yeah.
trying
It
to
has
show
the eelgrass
everything.
in its
Eelgrass,
mouth.
And the
yeah.
eelgrass, just try to show
And it had-
everything.
one of them had a band on it.
yeah,
I think.
yeah, it had a bandmate, yeah.
You had a band made for the.
Yeah.
Or did you have it made, or did you use
I made
one
it.
from?
I made it. It's got some initials on it. Yeah. And a year, 2020. People can do the math.
Yeah.
when we shot the hunting, Marty and I both talked about this. It has never been our objective to shoot the killing. That is not
No.
about it.
Well, it's not about the hunt; it's about the making of the decoys
And-
the
whole package.
and the person. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the ducks are there, and but and I do have to talk about my cinematographer on this, James Williams, that shot this. He did an incredible job.
Yes, he did.
I mean, he's
Yeah.
a super creative person.
Yep. Had insights that we didn't.
For sure.
which is
And
incredible.
he just devoured. We talked
Yeah.
about certain things, certain shots, and he killed it.
Yeah, he did.
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so well done.
Well, it's awesome, and I recommend people watch it. Can you tell people how they can watch it?
So if you look up YouTube Fishcamp,
Yeah, and what else do you have on there, just in general for?
so we're working on a couple of things now. So this is kind of an outlet. It's somewhat how this got our YouTube channel got started is for my home building. And I mean, we live in Paradise Valley, Montana, Livingston, and the homes we build are, I have to say, we're
incredible.
We're great.
The best. The best.
I mean, we're cabinet makers, and in that backdrop of Montana, and I wanted to capture that. My one of my cousin's daughters said during a trip, she's like, "You build beautiful homes. You should start a YouTube channel." And I'm like, I hate YouTube, but here we are, and it's interesting because
so is the rest of the world.
I've had so many of my home building clients that go to our website and see that, and then they see the hunting and fishing side, and I mean, they know who they're getting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm super authentic. This is who you get.
Yep.
And these are the homes we build. And, so that's how that started.
Okay. And then what made you progress into doing stuff like this?
Because I feel it's very important. I mean, again, as somebody who builds these, I didn't go to college. I didn't even finish high school. But I know building homes and cabinetry, that is what I am here for.
Right.
Marty, this is what you do. This is a gift. I mean, and some days, exactly. But some days it's work for sure.
Yeah.
But
everything is.
And it's our legacy.
Right.
I mean, that's important.
The key.
And you don't know that when you're young. It takes a lifetime of doing things like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think that's.
And sometimes you don't know where you'll be. When you're
exactly.
Who knows?
Well, that's why when you said, do you guys really want to hunt tomorrow morning? I'm like, may never be here again.
Yeah.
Right.
Heck yeah.
You're invited back. You can come back.
Awesome.
Y'all were nice guests. You can come back. Well, is there anything, Marty or Jody, that we haven't talked about that y'all want to touch on before we go? We didn't talk about hunting really that much.
No.
We probably should talk about that a little bit. The first day was ridiculously windy.
It was incredible.
And windy.
Man, the ducks. I mean, first time hunting Mississippi, and I mean, you
beautiful
guys and your family.
Family was.
I mean,
Thanks.
It was unbelievable.
It was like we knew them for
exactly.
for years.
Yeah.
We had a lot
Oh, that
of
makes
fun.
us feel bad. I'll have to tell them that.
Yeah. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. It was fun.
It was terrible shooting.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it there.
Yeah, let's just leave it there. I mean, the dogs picked up ducks.
Katie
exactly.
shot the best
And
out
we
of
and we ate a bunch of ducks last
Yeah, we
night.
did.
Yeah,
They
they
were
were delicious. No, it was fun. But yeah, that was fun. And getting to, I met you before at decoy shows, you and Barb, but it's not the same.
It's
No,
it's not
living
the same.
with somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the decoy stuff that's my business. That's your board meeting.
I'm there for work and you're there for work. Yeah.
It's just like you are here now.
Yeah.
That's when I'm at everybody, it's a hobby for most people, a leisurely thing.
Yeah.
That's where I make my living.
Yeah.
So it's a different aspect.
No, we're in a different mode. We're
Yeah.
No, definitely. And then it's nice to kind of get to hang out with somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like I guess it was 2 years ago. We're both friends with John Dieter. We talked about him, but I always knew him through that, and he's helped me so much through the years. I can't thank him enough. But I've started last 2 years after Easton. I stay with him for like 3 or 4 days, like a couple of days. I'm like, I'm gonna do this every year because I get to hang out with you.
Lucky you.
For like
I haven't
2
gotten
to
the
3
invite
days.
yet, so.
Yeah. Well, you can't have my room. But it's so nice because I finally get to we get to be relaxed in our normal selves around each other. Which that's why I really enjoyed having y'all here and get to do that. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank y'all
it was
for
awesome.
coming. All right. How do they find out about Fishcamp and all your other films and that sort of thing?
So, Fishcamp Creative on Instagram, fishcampcreative.com. Home building site is Fishcamp Custom if you wanted to look at that. So that's not very creative. It's Fishcamp.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to find.
Yeah, exactly. Unique name.
Like when I went to search for the decoy for his doc, it was like Marty Hanson decoy, and I got like a bunch of stuff, but then I put Fishcamp in.
There you go.
Went straight there. Yeah, you have more of you're randomly throughout the internet.
Yeah. I had a website, when they became the thing to do, and it was good, but it's just not.
You're pretty active on Facebook, though.
It's Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram. I'll put some stuff on, but
yeah,
I'm not
come
huge.
to a show.
Don't have a website anymore. Go to a show.
Right.
Before, also, I meant to mention this earlier, and I kind of want to talk on it because it's coming up. But the Minnesota Decoy Show, which
Yes.
you're very involved in,
Right.
can you like kind of let people know about that event and when it's going on and what'll
Yeah,
be
it's
there?
the last. It's the first full weekend in February, which the dates I think are the 26th, 28th. Yeah, well, it's the last week of January, first full weekend of February.
Okay.
Every year, it's the same time every year, but it depends on how it falls. But yeah, we have. It's one of the oldest shows. I think it's as old or older than the Midwest show.
Okay.
Dick Brust founded it in 1963 with a handful of other guys, 3M executive type guys, and they were meeting in a garage and or a living room, and it wasn't formally organized then, but they were doing that. And I think they formally organized in the late 60s, early 70s or whatever, but we've been around a long time. It's a good show. It's in Bloomington at the Marriott, which now I think is a Hilton, which they just switched. It's the Airport Marriott, Bloomington, 2020 American Boulevard, I think is the address.
Well, I wouldn't have gotten that off the top.
Our show is, it'll run Wednesday through Saturday.
And it'll be just open floor, like.
There'll be antiques. There'll be, the whole gamut of what like the Midwest show has, just everything. We have a couple small category contests, and there'll be contemporary Minnesota makers there, decorative and hunting decoy makers. There'll be antique vendors. There'll be, just about everything. We have an auction, great auction. There'll be like 100 birds, 125 birds for sale at the auction. It does well every year. John Southworth is our head man on that, and I think he talked to you at some point. Yeah, and so if you need to contact anybody, contact John Southworth. And
well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to hang out with me this week.
Yeah, and thanks to you and Ducks Unlimited for promoting
for doing all this and promoting
this is just incredible.
Being able to get together on this was really the cherry on top.
Oh, for sure.
It was.
You were supposed to come when your decoys were in the museum, but I'm glad we waited.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was nice. And now you get to come back
And that was a
again,
long
and
time
we'll
ago.
install some stuff,
Yeah.
put some more decoys in the museum.
Love to.
Another
Anything you
reason
need.
to be here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Jody and Marty, for coming on the show. Thanks to our producer, Chris Isaac, and thanks to you, our listener, for supporting wetlands and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you for listening to the DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit ducks.org/DU Podcast. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.